What's good, YouTube? Carfight King here, Aqua Life Baby. You already know how it is. So today, guys, I wanted to bring you guys my updated Zorga deck profile. I recently went undefeated with this deck last weekend's tournament. And I've really honestly settled on this build going forward into the set 2 format. So I don't think I'm gonna change any. Maybe minor changes could be in the trigger lineup, but so far I felt like this was pretty good. I also finished getting this deck to max rarity status, so that's really cool as well. So I wanted to also kind of flex that for you guys as well. So I'm gonna just go ahead and get right into the updated Zorga deck profile that I went undefeated with. Obviously, going with the ride, I think this is one of the best ride lines in the game right now. Dream Nibbling, Rancor Chain, Husk, and Zorga. Just a solid ride chain overall. You guys know what they do. Just a solid ride chain overall. As far as the trigger lineup goes, we got 4 copies of Elegy Pixie. This is the obviously the heal trigger from. This is one of my favorite SP rarities I've ever seen, so I really am glad I was able to pick up 4. Got 4 copies of the Abyss Temptation as well. Another cool looking SP. 2 crit, 2 draw, 3 front, and the over trigger. So with Stoichia, this is so the over trigger is basically the all trigger: heals, crits, draws, and it's a front trigger. It's just so I wanted to just change up my lineup. So I cut down 2 crits to put in 2 more draws, and the reason why I did that and to keep these, because like with the way that this deck plays, this deck is just really good at pushing numbers. And even if your opponent, a lot of times it's like your opponent has to drop multiple cards, perfect guards, or can't guard it. And I felt like, with some early game plays, the front trigger really does put in a lot of work. Now you can obviously interchange these out. Like, I thought about maybe going back to a little bit more crits. Maybe cut down the front one, put another crit here. But basically, we are going to be preparing for the 20k front triggers as well. And I feel like fronts in this deck are really strong. But I wanted to add in more draw because we're not doing a lot of heavy milling with like Hindrina or anything like that, and because we're not doing any heavy move with Hindrina, a lot of time, you want to get through your deck a little faster. I wanted to add in a little bit more defense so that when I do hit triggers, if I do hit triggers on damage, I have, if I hit the draw trigger on damage, that gets you 10,000 an extra card to hand. Even on drive check is pretty good because we want to see certain orders and see certain pieces. And again, we're not milling, we're not milling our heads off with this deck because milling, I don't feel, is justifiable right now as a really strong mechanic for the deck. It's a useful mechanic, but you're taking a chance because there's a lot of times in tournament where I've milled myself out of having triggers or an over trigger, blah blah blah. And so, milling to me just is not a justifiable mechanic as something that is extremely strong for this deck outside of milling, the forced mill with Cursed Souls. The milling with Hindrina is not really that great, but and maybe it'll get better as we go along down the line. But for right now, I felt like the draws were good in this place. So that's it for the trigger lineup. Let's go ahead and roll into the grade 1s as soon as we get everybody cleaned up here. Grade 1s are pretty simple. 4 copies of Admantis. Admantis is just a really good card. 4 PGs and 4 copies of Spiritual Body Condensation. So I bumped up Admantis a copy. Admantis is a with the way that guarding and shielding is now, that extra 5k can be the difference between your opponent dropping just a 15k shield and your opponent now being forced to drop something worth 20 or dropping 2 cards from their hand. So this card really changes up the numbers and makes things hit for just enough power to where your opponent is going to be forced into a difficult guarding situation, which is kind of like what I really like with a lot of my decks is forcing a difficult guarding situation. Nothing really to talk about the PGs. These are great. Got them max rarity. And then condensation is literally just a monster reborn, and it gives the +5. Kind of like we've talked about how valuable his +5 is whenever he's called to the board. This +5 is great too, and it's an order card, and it's literally just a monster reborn, so it's really good. This deck does go through the soul a lot, which is why Hindrina, she is effectively, I would call her the lifeblood of this deck. In a way, we go through the soul. A lot of things use the soul in this deck. And her ability to retire herself to make the soul blast cost free is really good. I can't see playing her at less than 4 copies, even moving forward. She's just that great of a card. And her mill effect is okay. Is not that great. It's okay if you want to take a chance. It's really one of those things where you take a random chance to mill it. But from what I found is that not milling with her, playing a normal game, getting used to activating your order cards without Alchemagic, which is fine too. And then you'll have the Alchemagic set up in the drop zone already. It's perfectly fine. You don't need to mill and take a chance on milling your over trigger and things like that, and then giving that type of information to your opponent. Because milling is cool and all, but it does have the chance to give a lot of valuable information to your opponent. And a lot of times, I found out through my playtesting and through multiple tournaments that the milling is not justifiable, and it can be, and more times than not, is more of a hindrance to your game plan and overall strategy and game flow than it is to not mill. So that's what I discovered there. And then obviously the last two is one of my favorite orders in the game, which is Ghost Chase. I absolutely love this card a lot. It's a really good card. You can, and your opponent can know that you can set it up where you can call your over trigger if it's in the drop zone, bounce it back to your hand. They have a 50k shield. A lot of times, if you're not reviving at Mantis, revive your PG and just boost with your PG, because sometimes the numbers don't really make a difference there, and boost with your PG, and then that if you have Ghost Chase, you can block something for 5k, bounce back the PG, and now you got a PG in your hand. This literally won me. This card has won me a lot of games. In final rounds and things like that, just because I'm able to set up my board defensively. Like, against Orphis, I'm able to set up my board defensively, and I was able to clutch out the game because I did have the guaranteed bounce back into a PG. So yeah, it's a really, really good card. I was playing him at 4, but I cut it down to 3 because since you can only activate 1 order per turn, sometimes you're holding them too long into late game. And then, last but not least, the rest of the 3s. 2 Hydraulic Ram Dragon still. I love this. You guys know how I feel. Love this card. I think it's better than Black Tear's Husk. 2 copies of Cursed Soul. I don't really like this card a lot, and I can't wait to really kind of, change this card out. But 2 of that. Obviously, 4 copies of GDR, Grief, Despair, and Rejection, and then our last 3 copies of Zorga. Currently, I like this 3 lineup. The Cursed Soul and Agony, sometimes you want to play the 3, and you can make the change to 3, cut it, add Mantis, whatever it is. Some people cut Ghost Chase down to 2, whatever it is. But it's a really good card to see early game, really not great late game. Unless your deck is like that and you're really kind of making your final push in a way. It's good early. It's good early, but its value depreciates the later in the game it gets. Plus, you're basically milling 4, so it can kind of hurt. GDR obviously is, to me, the best order in the deck. It's literally a front trigger for 1 counterblast. It's basically a front trigger if you apply it here, or you could consider it a Persona Ride. But on the turn, you Persona Ride and then activate this and give 10,000 to 3 units, Vanguard, and 2 other rear guards. That's essentially a double Persona Ride, so that's plus 20k to the front row. Really strong. This card is really good, being able to set this up, so you definitely want this at 4. Now, obviously, Hydraulic Ram is just your 18k beater, as long as you've Alchemagicked at least once during the game. So, yeah, but that's the deck profile, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys' builds are, and I will be, cranking up more Vanguard content for you guys as well, and maybe get back to some Digimon content as well. But this has been Cardfight King, Aqua Life Baby, and we are out of here.